the story of the Pilgrims and their first harvest celebration. The story of the Pilgrims began in England around 1606. Everyone in England at that time had to obey the rules of the Church of England. King James I was the head of the church. Some of the English people did not agree with the rules, and they did not believe the government had the right to tell people how to worship God.
These people wanted their own separate church, so they were called separatists. The separatists began holding secret meetings in William Brewster's home. He was their new leader. The king's men found out about these meetings, and some of the separatists were sent to prison. The separatists were afraid to stay in England. They decided to move to a country called Holland. In Holland, they could worship God freely.
The separatists lived in Holland for about 10 years, but life in Holland was hard. And worst of all, their children began to speak Dutch instead of English. They also married Dutch people and joined the Dutch Army and Navy. Their parents were unhappy. They were forgetting the English way of life and decided to journey to the New World.
These separatists were now called Pilgrims because they were going to a new land looking for religion's freedom. They bought a ship in Holland called the Speedwell and sailed to England. In England, they made a deal with some businessmen called merchants adventurers. The Pilgrims agreed to work for 7 years in America and send furs and lumber back to the merchants in England in order to pay for another ship and supplies. The second ship was called the Mayflower. She was a cargo ship and not built to carry passengers. Twice in August, the two ships set sail, but had to return to England because the speed was deep. It was too dangerous to sail on the Speedwell, so the Pilgrims decided to leave her behind. Some of its passengers and supplies crowded on board the Mayflower.
In September 1620, the Mayflower left England. Along came 102 men, women, children, and a few pet dogs. The journey was long and hard because they were crossing the Atlantic at the worst time of year, hurricane season. Many of the Pilgrims got seasick. They were also cramped inside the tiny, smelly ship with no lights and ceilings that were only 5 feet high. There was no privacy, no one took baths, and there were no bathrooms, only buckets.
Yeah! Of course, the Pilgrims wanted to bring all of their belongings, but they only had a tiny space to live in on board the Mayflower, so the families could only bring a few things with them. Each family brought a Bible box and one chest for their clothes. They could bring a cradle if they had a baby. The women brought things to cook it, and the men brought guns and swords and tools. They also stored farm equipment, furniture, rugs, and armor, and brought chickens, pigs, goats, sheep, and rabbits, and other supplies needed to start a colony. With all those animals, no wonder the ship was so smelly and had so many bugs.
P.U. The Pilgrims ate the same food day after day: salt pork and hardtack. Salt pork was salted beef, pork, or fish. Hardtack was a hard, dry biscuit. The food was usually eaten cold because the weather was too stormy to make fires for cooking. They also had cheese, butter, and beans. The water was not clean enough to drink, so everyone had to drink here, even the kids.
Oh my!
The journey lasted 66 days. The Pilgrims first landed at Cape Cod, but after being attacked by Native Americans, they sailed to Plymouth. Before they went ashore, they made an agreement to work together and obey the laws they had made. 41 men signed the Mayflower Compact. Women were not allowed to sign.
and they chose John Carver to be their governor. It was the first time in history British colonists ever chose their own leader.
The Pilgrims decided to name their new home Plymouth. They planned to have one street that went from the shore to the top of the hill. The Pilgrims planned to build houses on both sides of the street. At the top of the hill would be a meeting house in the fort. With the fort high up on the hill, they could see in all directions, and that is where they would place their cannons. Once they agreed upon these plans, the men immediately began building. Let's get to work!
Life in Plymouth that first winter was hard. The Pilgrims lived on the Mayflower. The men rowed ashore every day except Sunday to build homes. The first house was called the Common House. It was used for shelter by the men who were building. They also stored tools and guns there, and they used it as a church and a hospital. The men worked for 3 months, and finally, in the spring of 1621, the houses were ready. They had built 8 houses, a tool shed, the Common House, and a fort to protect them. There was also terrible sickness in Plymouth that first winter. Some days, only 6 or 7 people were well, and they had to care for everyone else. Even though the Pilgrims had plenty of medicine to kill aches and pains, nothing could kill the sickness. Dr. Fowler would try to bleed the sick by cutting open a vein and letting some of the bad blood flow out. Ouch! But this did not help. By the spring, half of the Pilgrims and sailors had died, and the Mayflower sailed back to England. There were now 52 Pilgrims, 22 children, 26 men, and only 4 women had survived that first winter.
Oh, that's sad. Imagine how the Pilgrims must have felt living in Plymouth. Everything was different from what they had been used to in England and home. There were no cities or towns. The wilderness had varied they found their usual fruits and vegetables, like crops that they did not know how to grow or even cook.
What is this?
It's a squash.
How do you cook it?
I don't know. The people they found living there dressed funny and acted differently from the children.
Pilgrims had come to the land of the Wampanoag. Wampanoag means people of the East. They have been living along the coast of Massachusetts and Rhode Island for thousands of years. The Wampanoag moved to different homes several times each year in order to get food. In spring, they would fish the rivers for salmon and herring. During planting season, they moved to the forest to hunt, and from December until April, they lived in their winter villages, eating the food they stored.
The Wampanoag called the turtle, deer, and fish little brothers. They respect the forest and they considered everything in nature their equal. Whenever a Wampanoag hunter made a kill, he was careful to leave behind some bones or meat as a spiritual offering to help other animals survive. Not to do so would be considered greedy. The Wampanoag also treated each other with respect. Any visitor to a Wampanoag home was provided with whatever food the family had, even if the supply was low.
Though there have been many villages filled with lots of Wampanoag families living along the coast, the Pilgrims found only cleared, empty fields and deserted villages. About 5 years before the Pilgrims arrived in the New World, a great sickness had spread, and most of the Native Americans living along the coast had died. By 1619, no one knows exactly what brought the sickness, but it was probably caused by the Europeans who had been coming to trade iron kettles, knives, and glass beads for furs with the Wampanoag. The Europeans spread diseases because they lived so closely with their animals.
The Native Americans became the Pilgrims' first friends. In March, a Native American named Samoset visited the Pilgrims. Later, he brought Chief Massasoit and a Native American named Squanto to meet the Pilgrims. Squanto decided to stay in Plymouth with the Pilgrims. Squanto taught the Pilgrims how to survive in this new world. He showed them how to catch fish and eels.
He taught them how to make animal traps and snares, and to hunt beaver and deer. He also showed the pilgrims how to hunt turkey and which herbs and vegetables taste good. Most important of all, Squanto taught the Pilgrims how to grow corn Wampanoag style. Corn was grown with squash and beans. The plants helped each other to grow and were called the Three Sisters. Corn was the most important crop. It was their main source of food and it was used for money. Squanto taught the Pilgrims to plant the corn in hills a few feet apart. Then he showed them how to place 3 fish with their heads together in each hill. This helped fertilize the earth. The Pilgrims needed to catch 20,000 fish each year to plant in their fields of corn.
Wow, that's a lot of fish.
Squanto lived with and helped the Pilgrims until he died about 2 years later. The Pilgrims may not have survived in the New World without the help they received from Squanto. They learned all that he had taught them and worked very hard to keep their colony alive. Even the Pilgrims' children worked very hard. From the moment they could walk, the children were part of the family team. They stayed with their mothers and helped with chores like pulling weeds, gathering nuts and berries, rocking a cradle, or sewing and knitting stockings. Once they were about 6 or 7, the boys learned to hunt, fish, and farm with their fathers. The mothers taught the girls to cook and to clean, tend their gardens, milk the cows and goats, and sew their clothing. The children also took turns watching for flies and scared birds and animals away from their crops. There were no schools in Plymouth. If you could write your name, do a little bit of math, and read 1 page of the Bible, you were all done with your schooling.
Yes. No homework.
In Plymouth, in those days, there was no spelling rules or dictionaries. We spelled a word the way it sounded to you, so even your name would be spelled many different ways.
Pilgrim parents loved their children, but were very strict. They could not allow their children to grow up to be stubborn or independent. They were taught to obey their parents, never say no, and never get angry at them. Boys and girls had to bow in respect to their parents to show respect, even when they grew up. It was the law. Good morning, Mother. Good morning, Father. Good morning,
The Pilgrims. Just like the Pilgrim children, the Wampanoag children worked to help their family survive. When they were very young, they carried water, dug for clams, trapped animals, and gathered nuts, berries, and firewood.
As they got older, they helped their mothers who were the farmers in the family. They helped plant weeds and harvest the crops. They also had to scare away and move from the field. Later, the Wampanoag girls learned to do all their work of their mothers. Besides working in the fields, they learned how to save the best seeds for next year's planting. They also learned how to make baskets and clay pots and to do the cooking. The boys learned to do the work of the men and became hunters, fishermen, and warriors. They learned how to shoot a bow and arrow, make bear traps, imitate bird calls, and build dugout canoes.
The Wampanoags were not as strict with their children, letting them explore freely and play games that would teach them the skills they would need to know as adults. The Wampanoag children did learn not to complain no matter how bad things got, and to be honest and to be tough.
When the first summer in Plymouth ended, there were 50 pilgrims. Their fall harvest provided plenty of food, so they planned a celebration to thank God for all they had.
They invited Chief Master Sawyer, who came with 90 braves. He sent some of them into the forest, but they brought back 5 deer to help feed everyone.
Pilgrim celebration was actually called the Harvest Festival. It was time to start working for a few days and just eat and have fun.
If you had said Happy Thanksgiving to a pilgrim during their harvest celebration, they would not know what you were talking about. A day of Thanksgiving was a religious holiday, and the pilgrims would have spent the day in church praying instead of celebrating.
The whole day?
The whole day.
The Harvest Festival lasted for 3 days. The Pilgrims and Native Americans ate turkey, geese, and duck. They also ate deer meat, called venison, and had vegetables like squash, beans, onions, cucumbers, and radishes. For dessert, there were dried fruits and dried berries.
What? No apple pie? No ice cream?
Nope.
During the 3-day celebration, they had a parade, sang songs, and danced traditional dances. They also played games like tug of war and blind man bluff. The men and boys shot their bows and arrows and had contests for jumping and running.
When the feast was over, the Wampanoag left, and the Pilgrims prepared themselves for another cold, long winter.
The custom of a harvest celebration or Thanksgiving, as we call it today, spread to the other colonies in New England in 1789. George Washington named November 26th a National Day of Thanksgiving.
Abraham Lincoln changed the date to the last Thursday in November. And in 1941, Thanksgiving became a legal federal holiday. Pilgrims, please stand.
A day of Thanksgiving with family and friends for hundreds of years. We wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving.
1, 2, 3.
Leaves that are changing in the fall. Pumpkins and turkeys, I love them all. Family and friends, even clouds of gray. These things I like about Thanksgiving Day. Pilgrims and Wampanoags planting corn. Friendship and brotherhood without scorn. Freedom and worship, learn and play. These things I like about Thanksgiving Day.
Thank you very much. You're a wonderful audience. I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving. For the students on your way out,